Beneath the shimmering skyline of modern New York, the echoes of storied names like Astor and Vanderbilt still whisper through the avenues and parks. Yet, as the centuries turned, so did the Guard. In our 21st century, the Big Apple has become a playground for a new cadre of power players whose fortunes aren't measured by last names or private club memberships, but are boldly etched in the digital and financial frontiers of today. And this modern New York isn't just a metropolis, it's a cultural performance, where high rollers orchestrate a symphony of urban evolution that thrums with the pulse of billions. Today, we'll share their stories, these new architects of the city that never sleeps, scripting its future with each clandestine signature to snatch up another corner of the Empire State. When you imagine the pulsating fashion heartbeat of New York City, your mind might dance to visions of celebrities or models, their heels clicking against the concrete catwalk, or streetwear culture bubbling up from the urban depths. Yet, unbeknownst to many, the true conductor of this fashion symphony is a generationally wealthy family you've probably never heard of, pulling the strings from behind a velvet curtain. In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we reveal a New York fashion dynasty built not just on the glossy pages of magazines, but on the very essence of media influence. Indeed, the Newhouse family, although coming from extremely humble origins on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, has masterfully maneuvered the chess pieces of couture, media, and culture. As we peel back the layers of this enigmatic powerhouse, a story unfolds that is as much about the fabric of American enterprise as it is about the threads worn on the streets of New York. Beneath the dazzling lights of New York fashion lies a well-kept secret. The strings of style are pulled by an old money family most wouldn't suspect, maneuvering the chess pieces of couture with a silent, seasoned hand. Enter Donald Newhouse, not merely a player in the media sphere, but its reigning king, with a fortune soaring to an eye-watering $19.4 billion US. And his realm, Advance Publications, is far from the media dynasties of yore initiated by Samuel Irving Newhouse, Sr., in 1922. This empire has blossomed into a veritable treasure trove, boasting the elite of magazine publishing, think Vogue, Vanity Fair, and The New Yorker, and branching into the realms of cable and the digital frontier with pieces like Reddit in its opulent mosaic. Now, let's cast the spotlight on Condé Nast, a name that whispers of fashion nobility yet remains an enigma to the uninitiated. Beneath the Newhouse ensign, it reigns supreme, not merely disseminating trends, but decreeing them, shaping the fashion world's zeitgeist. You see, Vogue isn't just a magazine. It's the gospel according to the fashion world, with Anna Wintour as its high priestess. And this isn't just about pretty clothes. It's about setting the cultural thermostat, with editions from Paris to Tokyo singing from the same hymn sheet, all orchestrated from a digital hub in London. But wait, there's a digital twist. Condé Nast isn't just leafing through pages, it's streaming into the future with Vogue's digital channels, cooking up original series that keep the brand buzzing across the interwebs. It's like they've got a crystal ball for media evolution. At the heart of this fashion empire stands Anna Wintour, wielding her influence with the finesse of a chess grandmaster. Since taking the helm of American Vogue in 1988, she's not just been in fashion, she has been fashion. And her eye for trends is seen as prophetic, catapulting Vogue and Condé Nast into the stratosphere of fashion authority. And then there's the Met Gala, fashion's night of nights, transformed under Wintour's watch into a spectacle that has everyone from Hollywood royalty to the titans of art vying for an invite. Indeed, for many, it's the Oscars of the fashion world, where Wintour's Midas touch sets the agenda for the style zeitgeist. Thus, the Newhouse dynasty, with its command over Advance Publications and Condé Nast, secretly weaves its influence through the fabric of New York and beyond, stitching together decisions that shape how we perceive fashion. And yet, this mammoth dynasty didn't start with a silver spoon in the mouth or a golden thread strewn across itself. Indeed, the saga of the Newhouse family begins, like so many American beginnings, as a rags-to-riches fairy tale in New York City. The origins of the wealthy family that would come to rule New York fashion begins with one Samuel Irving Newhouse Sr., originally Solomon Isidore Neuhaus, who was welcomed into the world on the 24th of May, 1895, in a modest dwelling on Manhattan's Lower East Side. As the firstborn of 8 siblings, his early life was set against the backdrop of a Jewish immigrant family navigating the complexities of American society. And his parents, Maya Neuhaus from Vitebsk, within the Russian Empire's bounds in what is present-day Belarus, and Rose, maiden name Ahrenfeld, from Austria-Hungary, embodied the aspirations and adversities typical of immigrants during that era. You see, the Neuhaus household was one of perseverance amidst economic difficulties and health setbacks, particularly for Maya, who had aspired to become a rabbi. And with limited marketable skills and compromised health, Maya found the American dream elusive. This led the family to relocate to Bayonne, New Jersey, hoping for a more favorable turn of events. Unfortunately, Maya's continuing health challenges necessitated a move to Connecticut in 1908 to live with his sister, leaving the family to fend for themselves. Now, in these trying times, Samuel, affectionately known as Sammy or Sam, emerged as a pillar of support for his family. His father's departure thrust upon him the responsibility of household provider, a role he embraced with maturity beyond his years. Opting to leave formal education behind, Samuel pursued a bookkeeping course at the Gaffrey School in Manhattan, marking the start of an extraordinary rise from humble beginnings to significant accomplishments. And Samuel's business acumen became apparent early on. His initial venture into the workforce as an office boy for Judge Herman Lazarus in Bayonne set the stage for his remarkable trajectory. His dedication and skill quickly earned him a promotion to office manager at the age of 16, reflecting his inherent leadership and innovative spirit. And one of Samuel's early notable achievements was his role in revitalizing the Bayonne Times. Tasked with managing the struggling newspaper, he ingeniously boosted its advertisement revenue, transforming its fortunes and securing a substantial ownership stake for himself. This success was a clear testament to his entrepreneurial drive and his knack for turning challenges into opportunities. But beyond his early exploits in the newspaper industry, Samuel was committed to furthering his education. He attended law school at night, earning a degree from the New Jersey Law School, now Rutgers School of Law, Newark, in 1916. However, his legal career was short-lived. After a disappointing loss in his sole case, Samuel compensated the client from his own funds, a decision that underscored his integrity but also solidified his preference for the newspaper business over legal practice. Yet, by 1922, Samuel's vision expanded beyond his initial successes. Pooling together his earnings, a modest financial contribution from his siblings, and leveraging the support of his early mentor, Judge Herman Lazarus, he embarked on a significant venture. With an investment of $98,000, a considerable sum at the time, Samuel acquired the Staten Island Advance. This strategic acquisition not only diversified his interests, but also laid the groundwork for what would evolve into a sprawling media conglomerate. Indeed, the Staten Island Advance would soon become the linchpin of Advance publications, propelling Samuel Newhouse Sr. into the annals of media moguls and establishing a lasting legacy in the American publishing landscape. In the dawn of the 1920s, Samuel Irving Newhouse Sr. set the foundation for a legacy in the American media sphere that would extend its influence for generations. Starting with the acquisition of the Staten Island Advance in 1922, Newhouse didn't merely enter the publishing arena. He initiated the expansion of a media dynasty, marking the first major step in a journey toward widespread ownership and influence across the media landscape. And Newhouse Sr.'s vision and strategic prowess were evident as he navigated the media industry, methodically expanding his holdings. For example, his acumen for seizing growth opportunities reshaped his initial venture into a diverse portfolio, encompassing a range of media outlets. Then, the interwar served as a crucial phase in the expansion of Newhouse's empire. Specifically, Samuel Irving Newhouse Sr.'s venture into fashion media, notably through the acquisition of Condé Nast Publications and its crown jewel, Vogue, in 1959 for $5 million, was as much a strategic business move as it was a personal endeavor, influenced by his wife's fondness for the magazine and, reportedly, as an anniversary gift. According to Newhouse himself, she asked for a fashion magazine and I went out and got her Vogue. And under Newhouse's guidance, Vogue transcended its already prestigious status, becoming a powerhouse of fashion and cultural influence. Now, the zenith of Newhouse Sr.'s influence spanned the 1960s and 70s, but his leadership extended beyond newspapers, deeply influencing the luxury magazine segment. Newhouse's media conglomerate, boasting titles like Vanity Fair and The New Yorker, became emblematic of cultural refinement and intellectual depth. And beyond his editorial empire, Newhouse was a notable figure in the arts and philanthropy, leaving a lasting impact on America's cultural scene. However, as we know, it takes more than just one generation or patriarch to make a family truly have generational wealth or become old money. In the next chapter, we'll see how Samuel Newhouse Sr.'s sons continued to carry the family mantle to even higher heights. Donald Newhouse and Samuel Irving Newhouse Jr., heirs to the influential Newhouse media empire, were immersed in the world of publishing, gaining insights and knowledge that would later guide them in leading the family's media conglomerate. Born in New York City in 1929, Donald Newhouse was intimately connected to the family business from a young age, learning the ropes by shadowing his father on newspaper routes. This hands-on experience complemented his academic pursuits. He later attended Syracuse University, furthering his education in preparation for a leadership role within the empire. Similarly, Samuel Irving Newhouse Jr., more commonly known as Cy, came into the world in November 1927, also in New York City. His education began at the Horace Mann School, a reputable private prep school, laying a solid academic foundation. Then, Cy's educational journey continued at Syracuse University, aligning with his father's media interests in the area. Despite departing prematurely, Cy's diverse experiences, including a journalistic stint in Paris and military service, broadened his understanding of the media industry and prepared him for future challenges. Next, the 1980s marked a significant period of transition for the Newhouse media holdings following the death of Samuel Irving Newhouse Sr. in 1979. Leadership of the empire passed to Donald and Cy Newhouse, signaling a new chapter in the company's history. This handover was not just a routine succession, it was a critical juncture that would dictate the direction of the family's media operations for years to come. Donald took charge of the newspaper division, applying his thorough knowledge of publishing and an eye for detail to oversee operations. And Cy, on the other hand, led the magazine division, including the esteemed Condé Nast portfolio, which featured iconic titles such as Vogue, The New Yorker, and Vanity Fair. Together, the brothers sought to honor their father's legacy while steering the company into a new era of digital transformation and market expansion. Now, Donald, steering the newspaper division, adeptly navigated the turbid waters of a declining print media sector. His efforts to modernize and digitally transform the family's newspaper portfolio were critical in maintaining their relevancy amidst a digital surge. His strategic investments in online platforms and technologies underscored a forward-thinking mindset that ensured the newspapers continued to engage readers in the digital era. And the strategic vision of the Newhouse brothers extended beyond domestic shores, eyeing the lucrative potential of global markets. The inception of Condé Nast International under their guidance marked a bold foray into foreign markets, launching flagship titles like Vogue in China, India, Russia, among others. This global expansion strategy not only broadened their brand's horizons, but also penetrated new audience segments and advertising opportunities, significantly bolstering the empire's growth trajectory. Their foray into digital media was highlighted by judicious investments in platforms such as Reddit, which soared to become one of the globe's most frequented websites. Their early stake in Reddit in 2006 stood as a symbol of their knack for identifying and leveraging digital trends early on, an investment that would yield substantial returns and underscore their prowess in digital strategy. However, the Newhouse brothers are not the only name in the next generations to get their time in the spotlight. Charlotte Newhouse, A descendant of this influential media dynasty has carved her niche in the entertainment world, particularly within comedy. Charlotte's foray into the entertainment sector is distinguished by her role as both creator and star of the Comedy Central series Idiot Sitter, alongside Gillian Bell. The series, which initially debuted as a web series, received critical acclaim and was adapted for television due to its popularity. And Charlotte's academic journey, culminating in a Bachelor of Arts from Columbia University, coupled with her extensive experience in improvisational and sketch comedy with the Groundlings, has laid a robust foundation for her artistic endeavors. However, we'll have to flip over to the next chapter to find out about the future of the entirety of the Newhouse family name, and if it will continue to succeed as it has for decades so far. In an era defined by swift technological advances and shifting consumer preferences, Condé Nast, under the guidance of Donald Newhouse, has adeptly navigated the transition from traditional print media to the digital frontier. This transition has been crucial for the company, a titan in the fashion publishing sector, faced with the imperative to evolve or risk obsolescence. You see, the digital age has ushered in a precipitous decline in print advertising revenues, historically the lifeblood of Condé Nast's business model. This challenge has been compounded by a fragmented advertising market, where traditional publications now vie for attention and dollars against a myriad of digital entities, including blogs and online native magazines. In response, Condé Nast has broadened its financial base, turning to luxury e-commerce and digital subscriptions as new revenue sources. Furthermore, video content has emerged as a pivotal element of Condé Nast's digital strategy. The establishment of Condé Nast Entertainment signifies a deep dive into multimedia, producing a wide array of video content designed to captivate audiences across various digital platforms. Despite the initial hurdles in monetizing this format, the division has witnessed impressive growth, illustrating the potential of video in enriching the digital narrative. And Vogue, a jewel in the Condé Nast crown, continues to thrive under the editorial leadership of Anna Wintour. Beyond her editorial responsibilities, Wintour has become an iconic figure in the fashion industry, largely through her stewardship of the Met Gala. The event, under her direction, has evolved into a cultural touchstone, blending fashion, celebrity and philanthropy into a spectacle that sets trends and ignites conversations extending far beyond the fashion sphere. Therefore, the Newhouse family's forward-looking stance, combined with Wintour's visionary leadership and unwavering commitment to excellence, points to a future where creativity and wealth accumulation coalesce. As the company looks ahead, these qualities will be instrumental in steering Vogue and Condé Nast through the uncertain terrains of fashion journalism, ensuring the Newhouse dynasty's place at the industry's vanguard. I want you to imagine that you've recently been gifted with seemingly unlimited control over the media narrative of America's richest and most influential city. Furthermore, with a simple unlocking of your phone and a few quick texts, you could contact your closest family members, comfortable with the knowledge that by the next morning you could make, or break, the livelihood of almost any politician, business tycoon, or even country. Although this Machiavellian level of instant power might seem enticing to some families, the ugly truth is that not only having but also keeping such world-changing influence for a lifetime, let alone for a century, is a feat that most of us simply wouldn't have the ingredients, let's call it that, to pull it off. In today's video at Old Money Luxury, we'll be discussing one particular family dynasty that, to put it bluntly, doesn't have that problem of us mere mortals, and do in fact possess the ingredients of power. Indeed, the Sulzbergs, along with their founding in-laws, the Olchs family, have owned the New York Times for an eye-watering 120-plus years, guiding America's paper of record, as they call it, through both World Wars, the Great Depression and Great Recession, presidential assassinations and resignations, multiple pandemics, and into the 21st century globalized world, all while managing to keep it in the family and maintain their status as the top dogs of New York and arguably American media. However, in order to recount their meteoric rise to stratospheric power properly, we must first start at the beginning, with a saga that begins, like so many classic American rags-to-riches tales, with a little-known immigrant reaching the shores of the land of opportunity, and snatching influence from the jaws of mediocrity. Our journey to the heights of media dominance begins in the seminal year of 1896, when Adolph Olchs, a 38-year-old media magnate hailing from Chattanooga, Tennessee, seized possession of the New York Times, a floundering newspaper in dire need of resurgence. At the time, the once iconic newspaper's circulation had plummeted to around 9,000 copies, a paltry fraction of what its competitors were boasting, and the Times management was fraught with inefficiencies, leading to financial losses that put the paper on the brink of bankruptcy. Furthermore, the rise of yellow journalism, characterized by sensationalism and sometimes irresponsible reporting by competitors like William Randolph Hearst's New York Journal and Joseph Pulitzer's New York World, was drawing readers away. These factors contributed to the paper's loss of desirability and financial solvency, creating a ripe opportunity for someone like Adolph Olchs to step in and attempt a turnaround. Born in Germany into a distinguished Jewish lineage, young Olchs immigrated to American soil and soon took the world of journalism by storm, rapidly ascending through its echelons. For example, in 1884, he claimed ownership of the Chattanooga Times and fastidiously turned it into a paragon of journalistic success in the southern states. Subsequently envisioning an even grander stage for his talents, Olchs's astute media eye saw the New York Times as the quintessential American newspaper of record, and thus aspired for it to gain unparalleled reverence and global readership in the coming 20th century. But Olchs' ability to climb the ladders of power extended far beyond simply turning newspapers into media giants. His shrewd marriage decisions would also have a part to play in the family's monumental rise to influence. In 1900, Adolph Olchs wedded the captivating Effie Wise. Far from an ordinary woman, Effie was the daughter of Rabbi Isaac Meyer Wise, an American Jewish luminary. Joining hearts and uniting empires, Effie ushered Olchs into the orbit of her affluent uncles, Cyrus and Ferdinand Sulzberger, formidable pillars in the spheres of cotton trade and jurisprudence, respectively. Given their previous experience in commerce, Cyrus and Ferdinand Sulzberger were no strangers to the machinations of business and power. Recognizing the potential to extend their influence and prestige, the Sulzbergers invested both financial resources and social capital into Adolph's vision for the New York Times, becoming stakeholders in its success. Now, to resurrect the Times name and financial stability, the Olchs-Sulzberger gents implemented a multi-pronged approach. Olchs focused on raising the journalistic standards, eschewing the sensationalism that characterized much of the era's press, while Cyrus and Ferdinand invested in new printing technologies to improve efficiency and lower costs. Additionally, the Sulzberger brothers leveraged their social and business networks to secure advantageous advertising contracts and facilitated exclusive interviews and scoops, all while simultaneously clearing its debt and positioning it as a serious publication committed to journalistic integrity. Riding this string of business victories, by 1904, the New York Times had moved its operations to an imposing edifice in Longacre Square, standing as the tallest structure in the metropolis and signaling the paper's soaring ambitions. Such an auspicious relocation led to the square's eventual rechristening as Times Square, a monumental site that became synonymous with the vibrant pulse of New York City. Even better for the family of burgeoning media tycoons, in 1913, the New York Times was lavished with its first Pulitzer Prize for public service, specifically for its unparalleled coverage of the tragic sinking of the Titanic, further increasing the paper's reputation as a guardian of journalistic excellence. Entering the Roaring Twenties, the familial networks of Olchs and the Sulzbergers intertwined even more deeply in the intricacies of the New York Times, with Arthur Hayes Sulzberger, Adolph's industrious son-in-law, affiliating himself with the paper in 1918, with Arthur's swift ascent within the company culminating in his becoming the publisher in 1935, and additional members from both prestigious families enrolling in the publication's operations during this period. Thus, by the decade's end, the New York Times was securely helmed by the united visions of the Olchs and Sulzberger clans, undertaking diverse roles from reporting and editing to publishing. However, this up-and-coming power family would soon face challenges and temptations that not even their vast wealth and influence could easily conquer. Could the integrity of the Olchs-Sulzbergs cash cow newspaper withstand the seismic shifts of a society on the brink of World War II, political upheaval, and technological revolution? In the transformative year of 1935, Arthur Hayes Sulzberger, Adolf Olchs' aforementioned son-in-law, assumed the role of publisher for the New York Times, inheriting the monumental legacy and vision for journalistic supremacy. Sulzberger was an unwavering sentinel for press freedom and navigated the paper through an epoch marked by monumental global happenings, spanning from the tumultuous tides of World War II, the ideological entanglements of the Cold War, to the divisive quagmire of the Vietnam War. However, not content with mere domestic triumph, Sulzberger had further propelled the paper into the international arena, inaugurating overseas bureaus in the hopes of furnishing a balanced, thorough coverage of global events. At the cornerstone of the Sulzberger dynasty was Iphigenie Olchs-Sulzberger, Arthur's indomitable wife and the child of Adolf Olchs. Her role in the family enterprise was far from ornamental. She was an integral member of the board of directors for the New York Times Company for an extensive period. Additionally, her influence permeated the newspaper's managerial echelons. A fervent advocate for women's empowerment, Iphigenie ensured the elevation of women to commanding roles within the newspaper's infrastructure, and her philanthropic interests also extended into the realms of arts and education, reinforcing the family's wider societal impact. Therefore, as we can see, the Olchs-Sulzberger dynasty had, in the span of just 2 generations, followed the old money family playbook of strategic intermarriage, placing family members in key positions of influence and extending their financial clout from the local to the global arena. Now, in 1967, the formation of the New York Times Company heralded an era of diversification and expansive growth. Though the venture went public, the reins of power were still firmly clutched by the Sulzberger lineage. The corporation branched into a multifaceted media conglomerate, adding radio and television stations, along with magazines, to its burgeoning empire. Furthermore, in the year of 1971, under the vigilant guardianship of the Sulzberger family, the New York Times took an audacious leap in journalistic valor by publishing the Pentagon Papers, classified government documents laying bare the obscured realities of the Vietnam War. This publication sent seismic shockwaves through the corridors of power, culminating in a titanic legal clash between the Nixon administration and the newspaper. When the dust settled, it was seen a triumph for the First Amendment, as the Supreme Court sided with the venerable institution of the New York Times. The same pivotal year also saw the newspaper grapple with labor strikes, orchestrated by the Newspaper Guild, representing the journalists and staff. These strikes crippled the paper's operations for months, suspending publication on multiple occasions. This crucible not only disrupted the newspaper's workflow, it additionally served as a moment of reckoning for the Sulzberger family, bringing to light limitations on their hereditary dominion over New York media, and prompting questions about whether or not the family would ruin their then decades-long chain of generational wealth preeminence. The Sulzbergers answered the call for financial innovation in 1976 by taking the New York Times Company public. The sale of shares to external investors yielded an immediate influx of capital, albeit at the cost of diluting the family's controlling stake. This strategic move also instituted a new governance structure, making the company answerable to its shareholders who could now elect the board of directors, thereby adding layers of corporate accountability. And in the 1980s, the Sulzbergers continued their strategic plays to ensure the paper's relevance and financial stability. Capitalizing on the burgeoning 24-hour news cycle, they acquired several smaller regional newspapers and media outlets to diversify their portfolio. With the launch of new sections like Science Times and investment in investigative journalism, the paper further positioned itself as an intellectual authority, not merely a general newspaper of record. Towards the end of the third generation of Olchs-Sulzberger ownership of the New York Times, the family had learned some key lessons on how to maintain both generational wealth and monumental global power. They had learned to take calculated business risks, such as the controversial publishing of the Pentagon Papers, and later their Pulitzer Prize-winning bet on their coverage of the Watergate scandal. They showed a fearless tenacity to face technological advances head-on, such as their early adoption of computerized typesetting in the 1970s, which reduced production costs and increased efficiency. Finally, like many old money families that keep their wealth for generations, they strategically acquired other media assets, such as their eventual purchase of the Boston Globe in 1993, helping to diversify their portfolio and spread financial risk. Now, entering the stage in 1997 was Arthur Sulzberger Jr., the fourth-generation torchbearer of this journalistic dynasty. His tenure commenced in an era of digital disruption and waning print profits. Undeterred, Sulzberger Jr. spearheaded a modernization initiative that would fortify the paper's footing in the 21st century. Investments poured into enhancing digital capabilities and restructuring the print edition, streamlining the number of pages while incorporating vibrant color schemes. These reformative strides yielded fruit. The New York Times metamorphosed yet again into a resilient, financially robust global news entity. However, this seemingly advantageous digital shift for the Sulzbergers' golden goose laid the seeds of potential destruction for the family's empire. For as we all have learned, many of the lessons of the 20th century became useless platitudes and moot points in the face of a rapidly changing 21st century. And what would happen next could crush even the most shrewd of old money families like the Sulzbergers. On a seemingly tranquil September morning in 2001, New York Times editors sipped their coffees, clueless to how in just a few short hours, the most shocking event in American history since the Kennedy assassination was about to unfold before their very eyes on global television. Under the stewardship of the Sulzbergers, the Times quickly grasped the magnitude of the 9/11 attacks. Commercial planes hijacked by terrorists crashing into the World Trade Center's Twin Towers in New York City and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. This unparalleled act of terror led to the immediate loss of thousands of lives and had a profound impact on national security and foreign policy. Simultaneously, the Times editorial team sprang into action, deploying reporters and photographers to the scenes of destruction and working tirelessly to try to provide comprehensive, reliable coverage during a moment of national crisis. In that pivotal year, a staggering 6 Pulitzer Prizes for journalism were bestowed for New York Times pieces linked to the 9/11 attacks or subsequent anti-terrorism efforts, solidifying the Times' role as a vigilant observer of human conditions. Fast forward to 2003, as the newspaper grapples with its first major ethical quagmire in quite a while. Reporter Jason Blair is caught in a web of deceit. Plagiarism and fabrications mar his contributions. The incident leaves the paper's reputation in jeopardy and prompts serious questions about its editorial rigor. In the aftermath, the newspaper jettisons Blair, issues public apologies, and ushers in reforms to fortify its editorial sanctity. Enhanced standards and augmented editorial staff became the new watchwords. Come 2008, and another crisis looms. This time, the financial scaffolding of Wall Street crumbles. Amid an era where venerable publications collapse like dominoes, the Sulzbergers navigate the New York Times with cautious skill through tumultuous economic currents. Although difficult decisions like workforce reductions are inevitable, their commitment to journalistic quality provides an invaluable service to readers, safeguarding the newspaper's resilience. The year 2011 heralds yet another paradigm shift. Print journalism is on the wane, and a digital vortex beckons. Faced with a crucial decision, the Sulzbergers opt for a digital subscription model. Despite initial skepticism, this audacious move proves transformative, not only enhancing revenue, but becoming a blueprint for the industry, reinforcing the Times' bulwark against digital disruptions. More recently, 2015 marks the advent of A.G. Sulzberger, a youthful inheritor of an august legacy. Young in age but steely in resolve, he perceives digital subscriptions not as an adjunct, but as an imperative. AG embarks on a digital renaissance, amplifying online presence, deploying innovative technologies, and tailoring adaptive strategies. Under the leadership of A.G. Sulzberger, the Times witnessed an unparalleled surge in its subscription base, amassing over 8 million loyalists across its print and digital platforms during earth-shattering moments like the COVID-19 pandemic and the 2020 US presidential election. Yet, lurking behind this resurgence in success, the New York Times was quickly racking up a controversial us against them tag to its reporting practices as independent journalism and distaste for what many have seen as biased coverage started to shake the very foundations of what the Times and the Sulzbergers had built their name upon: journalistic integrity. Indeed, any conversation about the New York Times and the Sulzberger family that sidesteps the paper's recent series of controversies would be glaringly deficient. Over the last 7 to 8 years, the Times had found itself mired in multiple quagmires that heightened questions about its once legendary journalistic integrity. Take 2015, for example. A comprehensive study accused the Times of unabashed national bias during the Iranian nuclear crisis, contending that it outright minimized the United States' involvement. This was seen as no mere oversight. It was purported to be a failure to present a balanced view. Then jump to 2021, when another scholarly investigation hammered the Times for its persistent bad news bias. More than just a question of tone, the study asserted that the Times' coverage was more negatively tinted than that of any other major publication examined, including scientific journals and international outlets, with the implication of the studying being that the Times had perhaps made a deliberate editorial choice to amplify negativity. But unfortunately for the family, the controversies haven't ended there. In a courtroom drama with Project Veritas, a conservative activist group, the Times found itself on the receiving end of a temporary publishing ban issued by a New York judge. Indeed, this was no trivial matter. The newspaper stood accused of exceeding journalistic boundaries by directly quoting confidential legal documents. Furthermore, throughout the Trump administration, criticisms of bias reached fever pitch. The Times was said to not just be reporting the news. To many, it appeared to be taking sides, adding fuel to an already polarized public discourse. Still ensconced in the eye of this multifaceted storm is the Olchs-Sulzbergs dynasty, the indomitable captains at the newspaper's helm. Commanding a monopoly on the voting shares of the New York Times Company, their imprint on the newspaper's journalistic ethos and commercial strategy is inextricable. While detractors decry this as a hegemonic stranglehold, contending that such familial dominion imperils the newspaper's much-vaunted impartiality, the Sulzbergers advocate that their stewardship serves as the bulwark defending the paper's editorial sanctity. Regardless of which side of the coin you land on, it is clear that the Olchs-Sulzbergers' leadership of the New York Times for more than a century has been nothing short of remarkable. An unending reign of power plays, shrewd familial transitions, and calculated business moves that could teach us all a little bit more about how it feels to run an old money media empire. There are only a few families in the history of New York that can claim multiple members of their dynasty had a direct impact on the city that never sleeps. Sure, we've all learned about and marveled at monikers like Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, Carnegie, and Astor. However, what if I was to tell you that there's one family you might never have heard of, who've not only helped turn that small Dutch trading post on the tip of Manhattan into the Big Apple, but they also, since before America was even a country, had a direct hand in building up the United States military dominance, commercial development from coast to coast, and even arguably created the modern American aviation industry, all while snapping up the most impressive collection of artworks and opulent museums New York has ever seen. Indeed, in the pantheon of families in America, we could term old money. There's only one that has accomplished all of that and more: the Whitneys. In today's video at Old Money Luxury, we'll tell you the good, the bad, and the luxury of this illustrious dynasty as we unveil the old money family who own New York's art scene. The storied lineage of the Whitney family, a name that would become synonymous with ambition, innovation, and enterprise throughout the entire history of the United States, begins with John Whitney, born in Westminster, London, in 1592. His immigration to America during the Puritan Great Migration of the mid-17th century likely involved seeking opportunities and religious freedom, aligning with the aspirations of many Puritans of his time. You see, life in 17th century America was demanding for the Puritans, defined by a harsh New England climate and an often unforgiving landscape. However, the Puritan ethos, underpinned by values like community, hard work, and education, gave rise to a unique, innovative spirit. They were not only responsible for founding some of the first schools and colleges in America, including Harvard University, but also for instilling in their descendants a tireless pursuit of success. This innovative and entrepreneurial spirit helped to lay the groundwork for several major old money dynasties of Puritan lineage, such as the Astors, the Cabots, the Lowells, and the Whitneys. These families, carrying forward the legacy of their Puritan forebears, not only made significant contributions to American industry, finance, and trade, but also were patrons of arts and culture. The Whitneys, for example, invested heavily in various cultural endeavors. Their appreciation of education and moral enrichment, stemming from their Puritan roots, eventually led to substantial investment in art. Now, the Whitney family mansion, the Elms built in Watertown in 1710, would eventually stand as a lasting symbol of the family's prominence and success. Indeed, the early Whitney family's strong work ethic helped set the stage for business triumphs during an era when America was still finding its bearings. For example, Asa Whitney, a descendant of the prominent family, was an early visionary in recognizing the monumental potential of railroads in America. His fervent advocacy, though not resulting in direct construction, ignited public interest and led to the realization of the Union Pacific's opening in 1869. The importance of railroads to the development of modern America cannot be overstated. They became the lifeblood of the economy, accelerating industrial growth, connecting distant regions, and creating opportunities for millions. In particular, the Whitney family's role in this transformation exemplifies their lasting impact on the nation. Asa's vision for railroads, combined with the family's broader entrepreneurial spirit, contributed significantly to shaping the interconnected, prosperous America we know today, reflecting the family's legacy of innovation and progress. Additionally, Eli Whitney Jr., born in 1765, was a revolutionary figure who transformed the antebellum South with his invention of the cotton gin. Though he believed his invention would reduce the need for enslaved labor, it paradoxically strengthened the economic foundation of slavery by increasing the efficiency of cotton production. After losing profits to patent infringement, Whitney's innovative spirit led him to manufacture muskets for the U.S. Army, a pursuit he continued until his death in 1825, leaving an indelible mark on American industry. Furthermore, in 1885, the Whitney family's influence on America's development continued with William Collins Whitney's appointment as U.S. Secretary of the Navy. His belief in domestically produced warships being superior or equal to foreign-made ones guided a transformative era in naval modernization. Under his leadership, naval appropriations more than doubled, enabling the construction of advanced steel steamships and modern guns. His strategic vision, commitment to innovation, and belief in American manufacturing capability played a pivotal role in the nation's emergence as a global maritime power. Ships like the battleship Maine, constructed during his tenure, became symbols of American naval might, and his efforts set the stage for the United States' prominent role during the Spanish-American War and beyond. Thus, the Whitneys, in their essence, encapsulate the very spirit of American old money. With roots reaching back to the country's Puritan beginnings, they played an essential role in shaping America's financial and military might. Their influence extends even to the concept of the U.S. fulfilling its manifest destiny from coast to coast. But the close of the 19th century was merely a chapter in their storied legacy. The Whitney influence was poised for further expansion, setting the stage for an alliance with one of the Gilded Age's most distinguished families. The next masterstroke in their saga was yet to be played, a fitting continuation of a family that had already scripted some of the most legendary pages in the young nation's history. As the 20th century dawned, the union of two powerful American families signaled a new era of influence and innovation. On August 25, 1896, Gertrude Vanderbilt of the wealthy Vanderbilt clan married Harry Payne Whitney from the aforementioned Whitneys. Their offspring, Cornelius Vanderbilt Whitney, would inherit a fortune from both family lines and forge a path as a successful businessman in his own right. Cornelius Vanderbilt Whitney's influence would reach soaring heights in the field of commercial aviation. As one of the founders of Pan American Airways, established in 1927, he played a vital role in transforming the industry. Pan Am, with its pioneering spirit, became instrumental in introducing jet aircraft for commercial use, setting new standards for the entire aviation world. Whitney's backing, alongside other investors like William Avery Rockefeller III of the legendary Rockefeller Dynasty, supported Juan Trippe in creating the Aviation Corporation of America, which later evolved into Pan American World Airways. Before World War II, Pan Am stood alone as America's international airline and continued to define commercial flight by employing innovative technologies and aircraft types like the Boeing 707 and Boeing 747. These advances allowed Pan Am to offer unprecedented capacity and range, flying more passengers with fewer stops than their competitors. Pan Am's relentless pursuit of modernization and its significant contributions to commercial aviation had a lasting impact socially, politically, and economically. Its efforts helped shrink the world, changing global culture and leaving a legacy that continues to influence the industry. Though the airline faced financial hurdles and ceased operations in 1991, its pioneering spirit and groundbreaking contributions remain a vital chapter in aviation history. So, the Whitneys, having already achieved so much, took their influence to new heights, literally. They helped usher not just America but the entire world into the jet age, propelling humanity into the sky. Yet, even as Cornelius was reshaping the stratosphere, his family was about to stamp an even larger historic imprint back down on Earth. Now, the story of how the Whitney family permeated the artistic fabric of the 20th century finds its muse in Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney, a prominent sculptor, patron, and collector. Her passion and influence shaped not only her own legacy, but an entire era of American art. Gertrude's artistic journey began in earnest in 1907 and continued until her death in 1942. In those pivotal years, she established herself as a leading patron of American art, fostering talents that might otherwise have gone unrecognized. In 1914, her vision led her to create the Whitney Studio in Greenwich Village, a haven for contemporary artists whose groundbreaking work was often overlooked by traditional academies. This institution became an incubator for creativity, giving voice to the once voiceless. Her personal collection, growing to over 500 pieces by 1929, was a testament to her dedication. When her generous offer to donate these pieces to the Metropolitan Museum of Art was rebuffed, she took matters into her own hands, founding the Whitney Museum of American Art in 1930. This institution, opened in 1931, has since become a beacon of modern and contemporary American art. From Edward Hopper's iconic works Early Sunday Morning and Nighthawks to Jasper Johns's Three Flags and Louise Bourgeois' Quarantania, the Whitney Museum stands as a repository of diverse styles and subjects that reflect the richness of America's artistic landscape. And Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney's connection to the art world extended beyond mere collecting. Her support for emerging artists, particularly those like Robert Henry of the Ashcan School, fostered an environment where creativity thrived. Now, when the phrase "old money" is mentioned in the context of New York, the Rockefeller name inevitably comes to the fore. However, it is equally important to acknowledge the Whitney family, who have been central to the philanthropic and cultural fabric of New York City. While both the Rockefellers and the Whitneys have a storied history of philanthropic endeavors, their focuses differ. The Rockefellers have long directed their philanthropy towards a broad spectrum of areas, including education, healthcare, and the arts. Their influence permeates various institutions, reflecting a commitment to social welfare and cultural enrichment. The Whitney family, on the other hand, has been especially passionate about supporting the arts. The Whitney Museum of American Art has been pivotal in championing American art and artists at a time when European art often overshadowed local talents. Yet the Whitney family's support has not stopped at the museum. Their ongoing endeavors include initiatives like the Whitney Family Foundation, focused on organ donor registration services and medical research. So, while the Rockefellers may be more widely recognized, the Whitney family's cultural contributions to New York are undeniable and deserve recognition. However, their influence has not been without controversy. Over the years, the Whitneys have faced criticisms regarding their sway over cultural institutions and the arts. The Whitney Museum itself has been at the center of various disputes, such as the backlash for displaying a portrait of Emmett Till by a white artist during a Whitney biennial. This, along with instances of acquiring artworks at discounted prices without artists' consent, has led to public consternation. Moreover, the Whitney family's substantial influence in the art world has been critiqued for potentially overshadowing the impact of other individuals and groups. Specific controversies, like threats from family members to disinherit the museum over a piece accused of trivializing the Holocaust, have fueled public debates, further fanned by political figures like New York Mayor Rudolph Giuliani. Yet despite these controversies and the complexities of navigating their significant cultural footprint, the Whitney family's commitment to the arts persists in the 21st century. Their enduring impact on art institutions and cultural initiatives continues to shape the artistic landscape of New York. The duality of their legacy, marked by both significant contributions and public scrutiny, presents a nuanced view of a family deeply entwined with the city's cultural evolution, embodying both the triumphs and challenges of philanthropy in the arts. These days, under the glittering lights of New York's vibrant cultural landscape, descendants of Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney continue to weave their influence into the 21st century. Notable members such as Flora Miller Biddle and Fiona Donovan have maintained the family's artistic legacy, significantly contributing to the Whitney Museum of American Art's growth and development. Flora Miller Biddle, Gertrude's granddaughter, served as the museum's president, steering its evolution and reinforcing its position as a cultural beacon. Fiona Donovan, another descendant, has also played a vital role, echoing the family's enduring commitment to the arts. Additionally, Wheelock Locke Whitney III, an influential art collector and dealer, has furthered the family's artistic patronage through his contributions of notable 18th and 19th century paintings to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Now, Eli Whitney Debevoise II, another powerful member of the Whitneys, has extended the family's influence into international finance and law, serving as the U.S. executive director of the controversial World Bank Group and a partner at law firm Arnold & Porter LLP. Gertrude's descendant Phyllis Whitney's literary prowess brought a different dimension to the family's prominence. An award-winning mystery writer, her more than 70 novels made her an enduring figure in American literature. And Benson Whitney's diplomatic service as the United States ambassador to Norway and his venture capital endeavors further showcase the family's extensive power plays, intricately linked with American governance and innovation. This tapestry of influence, woven through art, literature, governance, and philanthropy, paints a picture of a family deeply intertwined with the cultural, social, and political fabric of New York and beyond. New York State, a titan of power, wealth, and influence, casts a long shadow not only across the United States, but also onto the global stage. Indeed, its bustling cities, financial institutions, and cultural behemoths steer the course of trends, politics, and economics far beyond its borders. And within this empire of ambition, one family once gripped the highest levers of power, their name synonymous with authority and influence, the Cuomos. Commanding the governor's office and dominating mainstream media, they were the personification of New York's indomitable spirit and its complex interplay of governance and communication. Yet, in a tale as old as time, the very zenith of their reign harbored the seeds of downfall. In today's episode, we share a narrative that spans from the governor's mansion to the newsrooms that shape public opinion, charting the rise and the tumultuous fall of a once mighty New York political dynasty, painting a portrait of a family that once held the Big Apple in their hands, before it all came tumbling down. Mario Cuomo, the 52nd governor of New York, was a political maestro, spinning the state through the highs and lows from 1983 to 1994. And with a knack for mixing progressive ideals with hard-nosed pragmatism, Cuomo faced down 2 national recessions with the finesse of a seasoned conductor. Under his watch, New York didn't just survive, it thrived, thanks to a cocktail of budget balancing, tax slashing, and job creating that would make any economist's heart sing. Then there was the Cuomo Economic Extravaganza, the biggest development initiative New York had ever seen. Think of it as Cuomo's concrete jungle dream, a scheme to spark private sector fireworks with a hefty dose of public cash in infrastructure. This wasn't just about laying bricks and mortar. It was about setting the stage for New York companies to take on the world, all part of Cuomo's grand plan to pump the state's economic muscles. But Cuomo wasn't all about the dollar bills. On the social front, he was a progressive powerhouse, setting up the country's mightiest substance abuse treatment network and a housing help program for the homeless that was the envy of the nation. He didn't stop there. His AIDS prevention and treatment plan was a beacon of hope, and his fresh take on criminal justice, especially drug-related crimes, broke new ground. And Cuomo's words could move mountains, and his 1984 Democratic National Convention keynote was the stuff of legend. Taking aim at Reagan's glossy America, Cuomo painted a picture of a nation where everyone, not just the lucky few, had a place. Switching gears to Andrew Cuomo, the 56th governor, who stepped into his dad's shoes and then his tenure from 2011 was marked by big-ticket items like the Buffalo Billion and massive infrastructure projects, including the Governor Mario M. Cuomo Bridge and a facelift for LaGuardia Airport. With a governance style as subtle as a sledgehammer, Cuomo's blend of unyielding pragmatism and sheer willpower carved his path through New York's intricate political maze. Yet Andrew's take charge, no backtalk regime, didn't win him fans in every corner. His leadership, often tagged as high-handed, set a lonely table, distancing both friend and foe. His tenure's defining moment came amidst the COVID-19 maelstrom, his daily briefings a beacon for a nation adrift. Initially hailed as a pandemic paragon, his approach, as unwavering as ever, sparked as much controversy as commendation. However, as we'll see later in the video, Andrew's private actions were lurking in the background, leading to one of the most harrowing political downfalls in New York State history. Parallel to Andrew's political theater, Chris Cuomo etched his own legacy in the volatile world of journalism. At CNN, Chris wasn't just another anchor. He was a force, propelling the Cuomo name into new realms of influence. With a career leap from law to journalism, Chris's trajectory was anything but ordinary. His early days saw him dabbling across news desks, but it was his CNN spotlight that thrust him into the national gaze. Launching Cuomo Prime Time in 2018, Chris shifted gears into prime time, his show quickly clinching top ratings. Here, his brazen interviewing style, a mix of confrontational zeal and keen insight, won him a dedicated following. Chris not only scaled journalistic heights, but also amplified the Cuomo brand, intertwining political heritage with media prowess. Through his eyes, viewers received not just news, but a narrative rich with the Cuomo legacy, blending the power of governance with the reach of broadcast, further entrenching the Cuomo dynasty in the American psyche. Yet, Chris arguably went down with the ship, trying to help his controversial governor brother, which in tandem brought much of the air out of the balloon for one of New York's most powerful families. However, before we get to the controversy, let's roll back the clock a bit and figure out how one family of immigrants could field not one, but two governors, almost back to back, in, arguably, America's most powerful state. In the early decades of the 20th century, Andrea and Immacolata Cuomo embarked on a significant journey from Italy to New York, reflecting a wider pattern of Italian migration to the United States. Born in New York City in 1901, Andrea was taken as a toddler to Italy, where he spent his early years in a small village outside Salerno, Campania. He returned to the United States decades later, utilizing his US passport. And Immacolata Giordano, originating from Tremonti in the Campania region, shared this journey of relocation. Their decision to move was indicative of the broader Italian immigrant pursuit for improved opportunities and a fresh start in America. The Cuomos settled in the Briarwood area of Queens, New York, where they managed Kessler's grocery store in South Jamaica, Queens. This venture allowed them to integrate into the American society while preserving their Italian cultural heritage. Thus, their son, Mario Cuomo, born on the 15th of June 1932 in Queens, grew amidst a cultural amalgam significantly shaped by a strong Italian-American community. And the socio-economic environment of Queens during the 1930s and 40s, characterized by the collective aspirations and adversities of immigrant households, deeply influenced Mario. Therefore, the Cuomo family, embodying the immigrant ethos of diligence, familial loyalty, and the value of education, navigated the challenges posed by economic scarcity and societal discrimination. Mario Cuomo's formative years in Queens, set against the backdrop of the Great Depression and World War II, were pivotal in molding his principles and persona. The family grocery store not only provided sustenance, but also became a community hub, emphasizing the significance of community support and altruism. Despite the prevailing economic tumult, the Cuomos' perseverance and commitment to their community profoundly impacted Mario, shaping his future endeavors in education and beyond. He demonstrated academic and athletic excellence through his education at New York City, PS 50, and St. John's Preparatory School, later attending St. John's University, where he distinguished himself, both scholastically and as a formidable center fielder on the baseball field. Cuomo's academic and athletic achievements at St. John's University culminated in his graduation summa cum laude in 1953. In fact, his prowess on the baseball field attracted the Pittsburgh Pirates, leading to a brief professional engagement curtailed by an injury. This setback redirected his path back to academia and law, laying the foundation for his legal and political career. His return to St. John's for law school saw him graduate at the top of his class in 1956, despite facing challenges in securing a position in a law firm due to prevalent ethnic biases. His determination eventually led to a role in a reputable law firm, setting the stage for his entry into public service. Cuomo's foray into politics led him to emerge as a vocal advocate for community rights, notably playing a mediating role in a Queens public housing dispute. This involvement, coupled with his efforts in the Forest Hills housing controversy, demonstrated his adeptness at navigating complex political issues, and his contributions soon gained the attention of New York City Mayor John Lindsay, leading to an appointment that propelled Cuomo into the limelight and marked the commencement of his political journey. Now, Mario Cuomo's ascent through New York State's political landscape during the 1970s established a solid foundation for his eventual rise to the governorship. Beginning in 1975 as New York's Secretary of State under Governor Hugh Carey, Cuomo played a pivotal role in introducing the state's initial public disclosure laws and overhauling its lobbying regulations. His tenure in this position was characterized by significant efforts to enhance transparency and accountability within government operations. These initiatives greatly resonated with the electorate and bolstered Cuomo's reputation as a dedicated reformer. By 1978, Cuomo's political career experienced another significant advancement when he secured the position of Lieutenant Governor of New York. And his tenure in this role was distinguished by a proactive governance style and an adeptness at resolving conflicts, notably ending a rent strike in Bronx's Co-op City and resolving a territorial dispute with the Mohawk people. His advocacy for the family of New York and his strong stance on various social issues, including his opposition to the death penalty, further reinforced his image as a compassionate leader willing to address complex societal challenges. Cuomo's experiences as Secretary of State and Lieutenant Governor not only sharpened his political skills, but also were instrumental in preparing him for the gubernatorial office, enabling him to establish a supportive network and display his leadership capabilities. Thus, the 1982 gubernatorial race was a watershed moment in Cuomo's career, featuring a classic ideological showdown. Representing the liberal faction of the Democratic Party, Cuomo faced off against conservative Republican Louis Lehrman. His campaign strategy highlighted his public service record, his opposition to Reaganomics, and his vision for the state, utilizing his oratory skills and progressive policy stance to attract a more diverse voter base. Subsequently emerging as a significant Democratic figure in the 1980s, Mario Cuomo gained national recognition, particularly through his memorable speech at the 1984 Democratic National Convention. In this address, he offered a well-received counter-narrative to President Ronald Reagan's shining city on a hill, portraying America as divided between wealth and poverty. This speech not only electrified the convention, but also cemented Cuomo's status as a prominent Democratic voice and a potential presidential candidate. During his tenure as New York's governor from 1983 to 1994, Cuomo implemented policies embodying an allegiance to liberal ideals. Despite the conservative trend of the Reagan era, Cuomo remained a staunch liberal, advocating for the use of government power to facilitate social change, including expanding healthcare programs for low-income children and opposing the death penalty. But Cuomo's administration also faced challenges such as rising crime, poverty, and infrastructure decay. His approach involved increased public expenditure to tackle these issues, despite criticisms that his policies resulted in higher taxes and fiscal difficulties for the state. Thus, Cuomo's legacy is marked by his impactful policies and his exceptional oratory, and his influence on New York State and the Democratic Party endures. However, it would be his sons who would both simultaneously raise the family name to new heights while also bringing it crashing down soon thereafter. In a trajectory that mirrored the highs and lows of political life, Andrew Cuomo's journey through New York's political landscape demonstrates cunning and charisma, but also shocking impropriety. The early 2000s decade saw Cuomo retreating from the gubernatorial race, a decision precipitated by his remarks about the post-9/11 responses and overshadowed by the Democratic machine's alignment behind Carl McCall. Yet, this setback served merely as a prelude to a notable resurgence, with Cuomo securing the role of Attorney General in 2006. His tenure in this capacity laid the groundwork for a governance style characterized by a strategic exercise of authority aimed at addressing student loan exploitation and endemic corruption. Ascending to the governorship in 2010, a role once held by his father, Mario Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo orchestrated a series of legislative triumphs. Notable among these was the 2011 act that championed same-sex marriage rights. Furthermore, Cuomo took a definitive stance against hydraulic fracturing, citing the procedure's health hazards. His governance was marked by an ambitious agenda that spanned tax reform, education enhancement, healthcare improvement, and economic development, all underpinned by a progressive ethos. Then, the COVID-19 pandemic presented a unique challenge, yet Cuomo's administration was swift to expand telehealth access and integrate such services into the state's healthcare framework. Initially lauded for his leadership, Cuomo's legacy was later marred by scandals, culminating in his 2021 resignation. Parallel to Andrew's political narrative, Chris Cuomo, his brother, forged a successful path in journalism, distinct from the political realm. His tenure at CNN, notably through Cuomo Prime Time, underscored a candid, impactful journalistic style. Chris's role facilitated a platform for diverse dialogues, significantly influencing public and political discourse. However, the scandals that led to Andrew Cuomo's gubernatorial resignation and Chris Cuomo's subsequent departure from CNN reflect a period rife with personal and professional turmoil. Central to Andrew's resignation were multiple sexual harassment allegations substantiated by a Justice Department investigation and corroborated by a report from the New York Attorney General, Letitia James. These allegations, coupled with a questionable handling of COVID-19 data related to nursing home deaths, underscored a fraught period in Cuomo's governance, with his administration accused of underreporting fatalities to mitigate criticism. And Chris Cuomo's role during this period, particularly his advisory capacity to Andrew amidst the harassment allegations, resulted in his termination from CNN. His actions, which included leveraging media contacts to probe the accusers and participating in strategy meetings, breached the expected journalistic standards, leading to his professional downfall. Thus, the Cuomo family, a prominent name in New York politics, represents a saga of significant contributions intertwined with controversy, affecting their long-standing influence within the state's governance. Indeed, the Cuomos' influence on New York's political fabric is undeniable. However, the ensuing controversies and ethical dilemmas underscore the precarious nature of power and the imperative for accountability in public service. As the state forges ahead, the Cuomos' legacy will be remembered not only for their policy contributions, but also as a reminder of the complexities that accompany political dynasties. In a dimly lit, hushed room swirling with cigar smoke, J.P. Morgan sat like a king on his throne, emanating an aura of unassailable power. Across from him, political candidate William McKinley's face was etched with lines of worry and exhaustion, visibly burdened by the sinking reality that his presidential dreams could soon disintegrate into dust. The year was 1896, and America stood at a political precipice. You see, McKinley's campaign was gasping for financial life, teetering on the edge of insolvency. Sensing the moment's gravity, Morgan unceremoniously produced a staggering check, instantly lifting the weight from McKinley's shoulders and infusing newfound hope into his weary eyes. With that monumental financial lifeline, Morgan didn't just rescue McKinley's campaign, he essentially bought himself a president. Indeed, the sheer audacity of the act is mind-boggling. Imagine a single private citizen with the clout and resources to effectively install a US president, forever cementing his influence into the core of the American establishment. However, in some ways, Morgan wasn't an anomaly, but rather the crowning jewel in a lineage whose name has become an awe-inspiring symbol of American affluence and dominion. For over 2 centuries, the Morgans have stood as larger-than-life figures, their reach extending from early merchant endeavors to contemporary financial juggernauts like J.P. Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, and Morgan Grenfell. Without a doubt, this old money family hasn't just participated in the creation of modern America, they are some of its primary architects and patrons. In today's video at Old Money Luxury, join us as we retell the entire family saga from their maritime merchant ancestors through J.P. Morgan, the man who essentially invented American finance as we know it, all the way to recent members you can find on social media with parents on reality television. It's quite the story, we'll tell you. With that said, let us begin. From their initial voyage across the storm-tossed Atlantic in 1636, the Morgan family have established themselves as integral elements in the American narrative from the very beginning. Departing the 17th century Welsh countryside, they sought the verdant possibilities of the then Massachusetts Bay Colony, guided by an intoxicating blend of zeal and the quest for an unblemished life. Their ancestor, Miles Morgan, initially settled in Roxbury, Massachusetts, before recognizing the greater opportunities that Springfield presented. At the time, he took on various roles: warrior, farmer, and revered community figure, and attempt to provide pivotal contributions to a colonial society in its infancy. Given such a backdrop as having ancestors here longer than the country has been in existence, sometimes called having American founding stock lineage, it is likely that the Morgans do not see themselves as mere citizens, but as a seminal part of the American founding pedigree. Over decades, this self-perception probably kindles both an exalted pride and a ceaseless ambition, with each successive generation perceiving itself as the custodian of an ancestry that had its roots in the earliest colonial vessels. This sense of duty has thus served as an impassioned catalyst for their various exploits, be it military service, commercial ventures, or their conspicuous role in the social strata. Therefore, as history's pages continued to unfurl, the Morgans continued to evolve from local merchants to dynamic participants in America's fight for independence and economic self-sufficiency. A quintessential portrait of this evolution is Joseph Morgan, Jr., the illustrious great-grandson of Miles Morgan. Holding the rank of captain in the Massachusetts militia, Joseph was therefore an active participant in the drama of the American Revolutionary War, not merely an observer. Post-war, Joseph ventured into the bustling commercial sphere of Connecticut. There, he operated a diverse array of enterprises, a tavern, coffeehouse, and stagecoach line, before co-founding the Aetna Fire Insurance Company in 1819. Indeed, this endeavor has a legacy that reverberates even today. Aetna has evolved into a colossal entity, its roots deeply embedded in the soil of American business history. In 1835, Aetna, under Joseph's direction, experienced a windfall, covering the damages sustained by Wall Street firms during the Great Fire of New York. The decisive moment arrived when Joseph purchased the stakes of hesitant Aetna investors, promptly dispersing insurance payouts to the beleaguered banks. This swift action cemented Aetna's reputation on Wall Street and catapulted its premiums in subsequent years. Therefore, Joseph's commercial triumphs represent a pivotal moment in Morgan history. He was the first family member to be intricately involved with a corporate titan that continues to exert considerable influence today. To put this into a bird's-eye view perspective, the Morgans have thus been business pioneers longer than the United States has even been a country. Now, paving the way for future generations, Joseph would sire a son, Junius Spencer Morgan, destined to become another influential family figure on the global financial stage. Born in Holyoke, Massachusetts in 1813 to Joseph and Sarah Morgan, as was common for entrepreneurial young men of the time, Junius skipped the hallowed halls of university. Instead, at the age of 16, he apprenticed himself to Alfred Wells, a Boston merchant banker. For the next 5 years, Junius gained invaluable experience in the mercantile and banking spheres, absorbing the intricacies of the financial sector in both Boston and New York. You see, Junius was initially drawn to the sphere of business out of a keen sense for opportunity and an innate knack for numbers, more than a little influenced by the American ethos that equated financial success with virtue. Yet for all his prowess, Junius faced numerous challenges. His ventures, notably in the formation of J.S. Morgan and Company, were examined through the lens of ethical inquiry. Critiques often emerged about the firm's investments in enterprises of a morally ambiguous nature, industries built on the backs of underpaid labor, and deals that perpetuated social inequality. Though Junius's financial mastery was beyond reproach, it existed in a delicate interplay with ethical questions that resisted facile resolutions. In 1854, he subsequently embarked on a transformative chapter, uprooting himself to London, a calculated move underpinned by a melange of ambition and practicality. At that time, London was the pulsating heart of global finance and trade, providing Junius a grander stage to magnify his undertakings. In this teeming metropolis, he confronted an intricate tapestry of challenges. For example, America's burgeoning economic protectionism at the time often clashed with Britain's entrenched advocacy for free trade. On the flip side, Britain kept a vigilant eye on the fledgling United States, concerned that its global supremacy could be threatened by American ascendancy. Junius became the dynamic head of the firm in 1859, while Peabody remained the symbolic senior partner. He then inserted himself into London's high society, hosting opulent gatherings at his residences near Hyde Park and in Roehampton. And although Junius's Peabody and Company had considerable involvement in the transatlantic cotton trade, their core business lay in relationships with Eastern U.S. banks and railroad companies. This strategic alignment allowed them to remain somewhat insulated from the direct implications of American slavery, a contentious issue that gripped many London-based banks at the time. Therefore, during the tumultuous years of the American Civil War, Junius aligned his interests with the Union. The firm capitalized on this allegiance, trading Union war bonds to astonishing profits. Thus, nestled amidst these geopolitical tectonics and economic dissonances, Junius evolved into an invaluable liaison between American magnates and their European counterparts. He found himself enmeshed in the complex interplay of British-American trade negotiations and international diplomacy. But as Junius and his associates deftly navigated the intricacies of international finance through J.S. Morgan and Company, they could scarcely have foreseen that the legacy they were building would not merely endure, but would be monumentally amplified by the next generation, through his son. Born in 1837, John Pierpont Morgan's path to financial eminence appeared practically preordained. Under the rigorous guidance of his aforementioned father, Junius Spencer Morgan, his upbringing was a fusion of privilege, deliberate strategizing, and a unique set of hardships. You see, Junius was unrelenting in his expectations, pushing his son to excel in every aspect of life. This demanding upbringing had its own difficulties, as John Pierpont was burdened not only by his father's monumental pressures to succeed, but also by a recurrent skin ailment, rosacea, which would accompany J.P. Morgan throughout his life. Furthermore, this facial condition not only scarred him physically, but also influenced how he presented himself to the world. Because of his skin issues, Morgan was selective about how he was photographed, often favoring profiles that lessened the visual impact of his facial challenges. Yet what many perceived as a facial anomaly became, in some ways, an asset in a ruthless business world. His imposing countenance, partly a result of his skin condition, became legendary for intimidating competitors and associates alike. It was as if his visage mirrored the formidable, unyielding nature of his character. Now, to mold his son into a refined, cosmopolitan individual, Junius sent young Morgan to a medley of educational institutions. From the Episcopal Academy in Connecticut to the University of Göttingen in Germany, Morgan's educational journey was as broad as it was elite. This eclectic upbringing served as the cornerstone for a life destined to leave an unforgettable mark on the American business landscape, framing not only his capabilities in finance, but also his nuanced understanding of art, languages, and the complexities of human life. However, J.P. Morgan's early career wasn't without controversy, particularly during the Civil War years. Viewing the war itself not as a calamity, but as a lucrative venture, Morgan dabbled in the morally murky waters of war profiteering. One episode that particularly stands out as emblematic of Morgan's contentious actions is the infamous Hall Carbine affair. In this venture, Morgan financed the acquisition of 5,000 surplus rifles, each costing a mere $3.50. These firearms were subsequently sold to Union forces at a hefty profit, illustrating his willingness to capitalize on the nation's fractured state. Such maneuvers would cast a long shadow over his illustrious career, sculpting the narrative that painted him as a cold-hearted capitalist ready to profit from a nation torn asunder. Additionally, another noteworthy episode during the war occurred when J.P. Morgan's father received the crucial news of the fall of Vicksburg, before it was common knowledge in London's financial circles. Utilizing telegraph communications with his son John Pierpont in New York, Junius Spencer was alerted to this pivotal event in the American Civil War ahead of his competitors. Armed with this advance intelligence, the Morgans astutely seized the opportunity to buy up Union war bonds before their prices soared with the newfound optimism for the Union cause. This prescient move not only swelled their coffers, but also showcased the Morgan family's uncanny knack for exploiting real-time information, further consolidating their commanding presence in the intricate theater of finance. Such episodes, marred by ethical dilemmas yet undeniably shaping his path, contributed to the complex legacy that the early Morgans would leave behind. They reveal a group not just of immense influence and financial acumen, but also ones who tread the blurry line between opportunism and the darker facets of capitalism. Now, in 1871, J.P. Morgan's career took a monumental turn with the formation of Drexel, Morgan & Company, a venture with Philadelphia financier Anthony Joseph Drexel. Operating as an agent for European investments in the United States, the company played a pivotal role in reshaping the American economy, which until then had a robust market mainly for railroads and canals. To be clear, Drexel, Morgan & Company wasn't just successful, it was transformative, and it revitalized the American securities market and expanded the national capital market. But the company faced its fair share of controversies, often labeled as a symbol of greed and unchecked corporate power. However, at the dawn of the 20th century, John Pierpont Morgan found himself on the cusp of orchestrating what would become his financial masterstroke. Driven by an unquenchable thirst for consolidation and a vision of a streamlined, globally competitive American steel industry, Morgan aimed to achieve what no one before him had dared: the formation of the world's first billion-dollar corporation. The audacious venture took form as U.S. Steel, a behemoth birthed from the amalgamation of Federal Steel Company and Andrew Carnegie's Steel Leviathan. Morgan's strategic calculations were astute. By creating U.S. Steel, he sought to capture untapped economies of scale, thereby bolstering the competitiveness of American steel on the global stage. Indeed, the maneuvers he employed to pull this off were as complex as they were daring. Through skillful negotiations, a knack for understanding corporate value, and an unparalleled network of contacts, Morgan managed to convince key stakeholders that consolidation was the path to future profit and national prominence. Yet this monumental accomplishment did not escape scrutiny. Critics were quick to denounce US Steel as a monopoly, a dominating force that not only sought to control steel production, but also aspired to wield undue influence over affiliated industries. Such aggressive labor policies and a voracious appetite for control fanned the flames of public debate. The controversy that enveloped US Steel would echo in the chambers of policymakers, playing a significant role in shaping antitrust laws and labor rights for years to follow. Indeed, even as his titanic achievement with US Steel stirred turbulent waters of public discourse and legislative apprehension, J.P. Morgan managed to sail relatively unscathed. His cultivated social prominence and intricate web of influential connections, interwoven with a nuanced understanding of legal boundaries, afforded him a buffer from the severest of societal and legal reprisals. However, after the monumental creation of US Steel, Morgan would not rest on his laurels. He subsequently continued to be a dominant force in American finance, playing critical roles in stabilizing the US economy during periods of financial panic. Notably, his intervention in the Panic of 1907 showcased his immense influence, as he personally orchestrated a bailout of sorts, convening with other titans of industry to prevent a broader economic collapse. Additionally, as a patron of the arts, he amassed an extensive collection, including rare books and manuscripts, further etching his influence on American culture. But as time wore on, Morgan began to prepare for the inevitable passing of the torch. Though he would never completely step away from the empire he had built, he started laying the groundwork for the next generation. His son, J.P. Morgan Jr., would therefore inherit not just a business but an entire ethos, a philosophy of financial influence, social prominence, and yes, the intricate dance with public scrutiny and legislative oversight. Now, each successive generation of Morgans made its own unique contributions to the family legacy. Born as the heir apparent, the aforementioned John Pierpont Morgan Jr., commonly known as Jack, attended prestigious institutions like St. Paul's School and Harvard College, before following in his father's footsteps in both finance and philanthropy. Later, Jack's high-stakes involvement in World War I would display an uncanny resemblance to his father's actions during the American Civil War. As his firm became the sole supplier of munitions for the Allies, he facilitated massive loans and supply agreements with the British and French governments, earning a staggering 1% commission on $3 billion. While these transactions significantly funded the war effort and brought him enormous prestige, they also attracted criticism. He was accused of influencing American foreign policy for personal gain. Specifically, allegations suggested he pushed the US closer to joining the war to safeguard his extensive investments. Therefore, this duality of financial success, marred by ethical questioning, echoed his father's controversial business choices during the Civil War. Both men leveraged national conflict as a springboard for immense profit, and both faced public scrutiny for their willingness to capitalize on such grim circumstances. Furthermore, the Morgans were seminal in the founding of America's central bank, the Federal Reserve System, in 1913. After the aforementioned Panic of 1907 revealed the fragility of the US financial system, J.P. Morgan Sr. played a key role in conceptualizing a centralized banking structure. The family's influence therefore pervaded the Federal Reserve's architecture, triggering debate over the extent to which private banking interests had molded public policy. Soon thereafter, the Great Depression wreaked havoc on John Pierpont Morgan Jr.'s financial empire, causing his assets to sharply decline from a staggering $704 million to a lesser $425 million. Adding fuel to the fire was the Senate's Pecora hearings in 1932, which served as a catalyst for public animosity against Wall Street titans, with Morgan Jr. becoming a symbol of a flawed and failing financial system. These hearings thereby crystallized the public's image of Morgan Jr. as someone who opportunistically profited during periods of economic hardship, further intensifying the scrutiny his family had long been under. Additionally, amidst this turbulent backdrop, Morgan Stanley was founded in 1935, conceived as a direct response to the Glass-Steagall Act, which mandated the separation of commercial and investment banking activities. The company was meant to carry on the Morgan family's investment banking operations. Specifically, Henry Sturgis Morgan, a grandson of J.P. Morgan, was among its co-founders. The inception of Morgan Stanley thus served a dual purpose. It not only complied with new federal regulations, but also provided a pathway for the Morgan legacy to adapt and persist in a drastically altered financial landscape. Therefore, the Morgan legacy wouldn't end with Junior, it would continue with his grandchildren, J.P. Morgan III and Henry Sturgis Morgan. United in their business acumen, they additionally fused two banking powerhouses, Morgan Guaranty Trust Company of New York and J.P. Morgan and Company, to birth Morgan Guaranty Trust, which swiftly ascended the ranks to become a dominant global financial institution. This institution found itself in a complex geopolitical web during the Cold War era. As Morgan Guaranty Trust was intricately tied to significant corporations, both within the United States and globally, it couldn't escape scrutiny. Questions over the bank's vast influence and the ethical considerations surrounding its global footprint became subjects of intense discussion. Rolling into the 1980s, the Morgan lineage widened its financial focus by venturing into diverse investment channels. Alongside, they amplified their charitable work through ventures like the Morgan Family Fund and the Morgan Library and Museum. These altruistic efforts could not fully silence lingering questions about the source of their colossal wealth, a scrutiny intensified by the family's by then 100-year involvement in wartime profiteering and strategic corporate maneuvering. Now, the turn of the millennium saw another milestone when J.P. Morgan and Company united with Chase Manhattan Corporation. This merger created a financial juggernaut, raising eyebrows around antitrust issues. Nevertheless, such concerns were eventually sidelined, allowing this new entity to consolidate its formidable status in global banking. As of the last few years, the Morgan family remains firmly rooted in the echelons of old money, albeit in a somewhat unexpected manner, and not always in a quiet wealth kind of fashion. One example includes John Adams Morgan, who tied the knot with fashion designer and reality TV star Sonia Morgan in 1998. They have a daughter, Quincy Adams Morgan, who has mostly been kept away from the public eye. However, pictures of her are easily found on social media. Quincy recently graduated summa cum laude from the University of Pennsylvania in 2023, before moving to Los Angeles to ostensibly find a new path. Simultaneously, keeping to the old money principle of intermarriage between noble families, there is actually an entire segment of the Morgan dynasty who are members of the British aristocracy. You see, Mary Lyman Morgan Burns, a sister of J.P. Morgan, had a daughter, Mary Ethel, who married into the illustrious Harcourt family by becoming Viscountess Harcourt in 1899. Indeed, the name Harcourt has been a fixture in British history, going as far back as the 1100s. Over the centuries, the Harcourt family has amassed considerable influence in various sectors, most notably in politics and diplomacy. Further cementing the Morgans' foray into British aristocracy, Cynthia Mary Burns, related to the family through Walter Spencer Morgan Burns, married Sir John Gawen Carew Pole, 12th Baronet, in 1928. The Pole baronetcy is additionally one of the oldest in England, with a lineage dating back to the early 1600s, with roots in both politics and military service. Therefore, the story of the Morgans is a fascinating odyssey, from humble maritime merchants to powerful financiers who shaped epochs, with tentacles reaching into the creation of America's financial infrastructure, intricate engagements in global conflicts, and connections to British aristocracy. Their influence is as complex as it is vast. And, as if to put a cherry on top, they've also become household names in the nation's most essential financial institutions. Thus, in many ways, the Morgans encapsulate the multifaceted dimensions of American financial and political history, embodying both the benefits and complications that come with immense power and wealth. Let's picture this. You went to bed last night as your usual self, a millennial navigating the everyday challenges of life, living in a world that's often as mundane as it is exciting. However, when you woke up this morning, you're suddenly no longer just another face in the crowd. Instead, you're the heiress to a monumental fortune, carrying a last name that is a watchword for old money, global influence, and generational impact. What would you decide to do today as an old money millennial heiress? How would your demeanor change? And what would become your newfound interests? In today's video at Old Money Luxury, we're going to immerse you in the world of such an individual, exploring the mindset, activities, and sheer aura of a person who exists at this rarefied stratum of society. With that said, Get ready to step into the high-heeled and high-minded shoes of none other than Arianna Rockefeller, the old money millennial heiress. Now, Arianna Rockefeller, and yes, it appears her surname is so iconic that she didn't need a middle name, was born May 26, 1982, in the intellectually charged city of Cambridge, Massachusetts, emerging from a lineage that's nothing short of American royalty. Cambridge isn't merely a quaint little hometown, it's an incubator for the most brilliant minds, hosting powerhouses like Harvard University and MIT. And of course, young Arianna wasn't just any toddler playing at the pump in Harvard Yard. She was a Rockefeller, a name that carries with it an awe-inspiring economic gravitas. Indeed, her father, David Rockefeller Jr., has been vigilant in preserving this family grandeur, particularly since stepping in as family patriarch after the passing of the family leader, his father, David Rockefeller Sr., in 2017. Now we should keep in mind that being reared in a Cambridge backdrop would automatically situate teenage Arianna within a milieu shaped by the old money ethos. Places like Harvard and MIT don't just churn out PhDs, they're social engines that propel the fortunate few into the zenith of global society. They're gateways to the power corridors of the world. And educationally, Arianna is no slouch. More specifically, she was a pupil at the Ethel Walker School for Girls, a boarding institution that's essentially a breeding ground for America's next leading women. Think other old money heiresses like Ethel Dupont, who also attended the school, and you're in the right social stratosphere. From there, Arianna Rockefeller donned the Ivy League cloak as a student, graduating with a BA in political science from Columbia University, the very college her sister, Camilla, also attended. Furthermore, from an age where most of us were still playing with toy cars and dolls, Arianna was already captivated by the equine world. Those in the know realize that horse riding isn't just a sport, it's a declaration of social standing. Notable individuals like our late Queen Elizabeth II have an astute grasp of what it means to engage in equestrianism, keeping and showcasing quality horses not just as a hobby, but as an entry ticket to an exclusive society. Thus, in her teen years, Arianna absolutely galloped into competitive show jumping. In fact, Arianna's participation in amateur show jumping events has extended across both the American circuit and European grounds. Thus, from a childhood in the arguable old money capital of the United States, the greater Boston area, to an elite education while becoming skilled at the most old money of sporting traditions, early life for Arianna Rockefeller was indeed right on brand. Now, post-graduation, Arianna Rockefeller decided that instead of immediately stepping directly into the family fold, she would embark on a globe-trotting escapade and even took up a position at the United Nations. And let's be clear, interning and later working at the UN isn't a dalliance, it's a tactical move of the highest order. Where else could a future Rockefeller hone the skills of diplomacy and international politics, the lingua franca of global influence? Thus, this wasn't just about career development. It helped safeguard the family's imperial stature in a rapidly changing world. In 2005, Arianna's life took an unexpected twist when she met Matthew Bucklin amid the tranquil beauty of Mount Desert Island in Maine. And based on our research, Bucklin isn't your typical old money descended consort. He's a startup entrepreneur based out of Florida, a likely stark departure from the upper crust northeastern generational wealth Arianna was accustomed to. You see, in old money circles, matrimony has traditionally been another form of merger and acquisition, fusing wealth, influence, and legacy. But Arianna broke ranks. She didn't marry a senator's kid like her great-grandfather John D. Jr. did. No, she chose love, or so it seems, over legacy. Fast forward to 2019, and we find Arianna and Matthew divorced, notably without any children of their own. In a family where adding to the offspring is often tantamount to adding to the portfolio, this is seismic. This therefore turns the lens of power in Rockefeller succession and influence toward the younger lot. Perhaps one of the many Gen Z or Gen A Rockefellers from another portion of the family line is being groomed for dominion as we speak. Now, the tabloids recently had a field day when Arianna's newest dating choice made headlines, this time courtesy of her relationship with NBA player Enes Kanter Freedom, a man a full decade her junior. And Enes is not just an athlete, he's a politically vocal Turkish-American activist. Although marred by controversies, including ties to a reported terror group and allegations of perpetuating anti-Semitic beliefs, some say he's turned a corner. Ennis now finds himself at the forefront of combating anti-Semitism and advocating for human rights, a journey culminating in his legal name change to Freedom to champion his newfound US citizenship. But what does Arianna's relationship with Ennis imply for the Rockefellers? The Rockefeller legacy may be long established, but if Arianna has anything to say about it, expect the unexpected. Now, having dabbled in political outreach and United Nations career moves, Arianna Rockefeller has also made an audacious pivot towards the fashion world. In doing so, she unveiled a brand that's far more than mere cloth and thread. It's a visual narration of her own eclectic life, mingling the timeless allure of old money with the bold strokes of modernity. This isn't a departure from family values, it's a sartorial evolution of them, blending her love for horse riding with the gravitas of the Rockefeller lineage. In 2016, Arianna took her equestrian obsession to the next level, a specially curated collection of horse-themed handbags. Teaming up with Bassam Ali, an industry veteran who once worked with fashion mogul Reed Krakoff, she created her opulent accessories right in the heart of Brooklyn, with prices ranging from a somewhat accessible $695 to a jaw-dropping $2,300 for an ostrich skin tote. This is fashion designed to make you sit up and take notice. Then came her 2017 Dorado Beach capsule collection, a fashion nod to a Puerto Rican paradise crafted by her own great-uncle, Lawrence Rockefeller. But she didn't stop there. In 2021, Arianna brokered a deal with the Marilyn Agency in New York, an agency so revered it's practically fashion royalty. Its lineage includes icons like Claudia Schiffer and Kate Moss, names that turn heads and drop jaws. And Neil Martone, the CEO of Marilyn New York, was effusive in his praise for Arianna, touting her unique appeal to global fashion connoisseurs. Internationally, Arianna's reach is stretching even further, thanks to her involvement with select models in Milan. This isn't just any agency, it's a subsidiary of the globally influential Select Model Management, part of Ricardo Silva's empire, and this association has already catapulted her into the pages of globally renowned fashion publications like Mia Le Journal. But wait, there's more to Arianna than runways and magazine covers. True to her Rockefeller heritage, philanthropy courses through her veins like a genetic imperative. The woman serves on the board of the illustrious David Rockefeller Fund, for heaven's sake. Her portfolio of kindness includes focus areas from the arts and environmental conservation to social justice. The list of organizations she supports reads like a who's who of benevolent societies. God's Love We Deliver, the New York Museum of Modern Art, you name it. And just when you think she's done, Arianna takes her act international. In 2019, she hobnobbed with Greek culture minister Lina Mendoni, scoping out opportunities for cultural and business symbiosis that would extend her family's altruistic footprint to European soil. So here's the ultimate picture. Arianna Rockefeller is a rare hybrid of fashion maven, philanthropic luminary, and global ambassador. She's rewriting the Rockefeller narrative, one designer handbag and charitable endeavor at a time, and the world can't help but watch. So what's the verdict on Arianna Rockefeller and the old money archetype? Does she tick all the boxes? Let's unpack this, shall we? To begin with, Arianna's elite educational chronicle is nothing short of an old money playbook. She cut her academic teeth at the Ethel Walker School, following on the boarding school-educated shoulders of heiresses like Ethel DuPont and Amanda Hearst. If you're keeping score, that's DuPont Chemicals and the Hearst Media dynasty. She was essentially in a finishing school for the future influencers of America. Then there's her Cambridge upbringing. What could be more old money than growing up in a place saturated with elite academia? Think Harvard, think MIT. The very air in Cambridge is thick with legacy. If you're an heir or heiress, it's one of the best places to be seen and raised. Caroline Kennedy, yes, of those Kennedys, and Kyra Kennedy from the esteemed political clan can vouch for that. And what about hobbies? For Arianna, it's horse riding, which might as well be called the old money Olympics. This isn't just a pastime, it's practically a rite of passage for the uber-rich. Arianna's in excellent company here. Take Cornelia Guest, heiress to the post-serial fortune, or Charlotte Casiraghi, who has Monaco's royal palace as her childhood backdrop. Horseback riding is more than trotting around a track. It's an unspoken, galloping testament to a particular kind of privilege. And let's not forget the Columbia University years. Attending an Ivy League institution is the academic equivalent of being in an exclusive country club. You're not just learning, you're networking with America's next generation of power players. David Rockefeller Jr., Arianna's own father, and CNN luminary Anderson Cooper of the Vanderbilt line are both Ivy League alumni. Their college years were essentially a continuation of the elite cocoon in which they were raised. Furthermore, if we're taking a deeper look at Arianna Rockefeller's alignment with the traditional old money lifestyle, her UN stint is definitely on brand. Who else do you see in the bureaucratic hallways of international diplomacy? That's right, individuals like John Forbes Kerry, who come from a background of patrician privilege. For these folks, the UN isn't just another organization. It's an extension of the salons and boardrooms where global influence is quietly brokered. As for philanthropy, Arianna keeps it classy and traditional. She isn't one for shooting Instagram lives to narrate to the world how much of a do-gooder she is. Instead, she focuses on her charitable pursuits when she steps into the spotlight. She's following a playbook that's almost as old as her family fortune. Take Jack Schlossberg, the latest Kennedy on the philanthropic circuit. Both are deft in keeping the media focus on their charitable endeavors rather than their private lives. It's like social responsibility is their second language, something they were weaned on along with the heirloom silver. However, let's talk about some twists in the plot. Arianna's romantic choices are somewhat of a maverick move within the old money circles. Marrying someone who isn't from the same social stratosphere is quite the deviation from the norm, where unions often resemble mergers and acquisitions rather than matters of the heart. To add to this modern romantic narrative, they've opted not to have children. It's a departure from the old-school blueprints that are all about securing future generations of legacy and influence. But that's not all. Arianna's relationships have also been eyebrow-raising by old money standards. An NBA player as a romantic partner, and a controversial one at that? You won't find that in the socialite rulebook. Traditionally, romantic relationships were another way of tightening circles of influence, ensuring that status remains intact. Arianna's dalliance disrupts that status quo and hints at a new age worldview that isn't confined to family legacy and social expectations. And let's not forget her modeling career. That's pretty much new ground for someone from her background. The Rockefellers are indeed known for many things, but modeling isn't one of them. Yet Arianna manages to keep the family name shining bright, even under the fashion spotlights. Instead of turning her back on her roots, she brings the same sense of grace and purpose to the runway that she does to her charity galas. Her modeling career isn't a rebellious outburst. It's more like a modern adaptation of the old money values she was raised on. In summary, Arianna Rockefeller is both a custodian and a disruptor of her storied legacy. She maintains the old world charm and philanthropic pursuits that are the hallmarks of her lineage. Yet she's unafraid to carve out her own path, whether in love, work, or social circles. She's old money, all right, but with a flair for contemporary improvisation that makes her one to watch in the evolving narrative of America's elite. In the ever-evolving panorama of America's powerful dynasties, few families have sculpted the societal, political, and economic landscapes with such unrelenting vigor and artistry as the Roosevelts. Originating from 17th century Dutch immigrant roots in what would become New York City, the name Roosevelt quickly rose to encapsulate a kind of American royalty, whether brandishing their clout at the presidential podium or orchestrating financial miracles from ornate boardrooms. Indeed, the history of the Roosevelt family isn't merely a genealogical record, it's an exhilarating chronicle of American power and influence, spanning from the present day back to before the United States was even a country. Join us in today's episode of Old Money Luxury as we bring you through the entire journey and describe how the Roosevelts went from old money to presidents. Our story begins in the year 1650, more than 100 years before the founding of the United States, when America's first Roosevelt ancestor, the Dutch-born Klaus Martensen van Roosevelt, landed in the teeming harbors of New Amsterdam, a city that would grow into the metropolis we now know as New York City. In 1652, lured by the siren call of untapped prospects, Klaus procured a considerable swathe of prime land in a fertile expanse in what is presently known as Midtown Manhattan, from one Lambert van Valkenburg. Interestingly, this clairvoyant acquisition encompassed terrain that was destined to host monumental landmarks such as the Empire State Building, the legendary Madison Avenue of Mad Men fame, and the J.P. Morgan Library. Specifically, the area stretched from present-day Lexington Avenue and Fifth Avenue to roughly 29th Street, over to 35th Street. In terms of contemporary measurements, this area comprised an excess of 50 acres of prime real estate, with Klaus's son, Nicholas, leveraging the land ownership to ascend to the prominent position of the city's first alderman, thus pioneering the family name's inextricable connection with political power and financial influence. Now, Nicholas's children, Johannes and Jacobus, perpetuated their father's esteemed legacy, establishing two distinguished Roosevelt lineages, those hailing from the environs of Oyster Bay and Hyde Park. To put this into perspective, both Oyster Bay and Hyde Park were settings that helped inspire the neighborhoods dramatized in F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby and its subsequent films. So even back then, it would seem the Roosevelts knew a thing or two about where old money likes to reside. Now, Johannes Roosevelt was an entrepreneur endowed with extraordinary foresight, quickly becoming a family trait, and the successive generations born of Johannes wove themselves into New York's most elite circles through strategic matrimonial alliances with other prosperous families and shrewd real estate acquisitions in key locations around the city, as previously mentioned. Their marital liaisons served not merely as romantic unions, but as tactical partnerships that cemented their preeminence among New York's high society, the Roosevelt name thus growing to be reverently uttered alongside the city's most formidable luminaries. Next, Cornelius Roosevelt, the great-grandson of Johannes, significantly bolstered the family's wealth and empire-like ambitions. Inheriting a substantial fortune from his father, James Jacobus Roosevelt, in 1840, he quickly further enmeshed the name Roosevelt with New York City's financial elite. Initially involved in hardware imports, Cornelius wisely shifted his focus to the lucrative plate glass industry, significantly boosting his wealth. Moreover, Cornelius didn't just stop at industry. He ventured into finance as the founding director of the Chemical Bank of New York, a precursor to today's J.P. Morgan Chase & Company. In terms of raw numbers, he stood shoulder to shoulder with leading millionaires of his era, such as William B. Astor and Peter Lorillard. And by 1868, his fortune had likely soared to an estimated $25 million, equivalent to roughly $600 million today. Thus, while the name Roosevelt is now predominantly linked with political power, we can't overlook its deep entanglement with New York City's financial aristocracy. Indeed, this monumental family was a pillar in the city's transition from a modest Dutch trading post to an unparalleled epicenter of wealth and power, on both a national and global scale. Yet, as we know, wealth is but one dimension of success, and working your way into the White House during America's Gilded Age presents an entirely separate set of challenges and achievements. Little did Cornelius know that his grandson, Theodore, a child that he undoubtedly knew since their lifetimes overlapped significantly, would stretch well past the successes of even his multimillionaire grandfather in just a few short decades. Across the East River from Manhattan, at the same time, the real estate Roosevelts were building their empire. Family member Isaac Roosevelt, the great-great-grandfather of FDR, was quickly becoming one of the first large-scale sugar refiners in New York City, before leveraging that influence to serve in the New York State Assembly and the State Constitutional Convention. Therefore, Isaac holds the notable distinction as having achieved the most political success of any Roosevelt before his cousin, the future President Teddy. However, it would be uncouth to not mention here that Isaac's sugar business was heavily reliant on slave labor, as New York City's sugar was cultivated almost entirely by enslaved persons in the Caribbean. Thus, without mincing words, an essential root of the substantial wealth, prominence, and influence that the Hyde Park Roosevelts came to amass, Franklin and Eleanor's line of the family, derived directly from America's engagement in the transatlantic slave trade. With Isaac's passing, the torch of Roosevelt ambition was bequeathed to ensuing generations. James, Isaac's son, donned the familial mantle with vim and vigor as he additionally wove through the complex corridors of New York City's political stage, the banking sector, and the nuanced world of sugar refinement. More importantly, An unforgettable headquarters of the family's prominence would be purchased by James and his lineal successors in 1819, when they banded together to create a sanctuary for the Roosevelts in Hyde Park, New York. A few decades later, in the throbbing core of New York City, another world-changing Roosevelt was brought forth into the world in the morning hours of the 27th of October, 1858. Theodore Roosevelt, the second child in a brood of four, seemed preordained for unparalleled achievements. His father, Theodore Sr., had descended from a cadre of affluent entrepreneurs in the Roosevelt family line, while concurrently his mother, the winsome Martha "Mittie" Roosevelt, drew her heritage from the agrarian expanses of a Georgian plantation. Nurtured within the warmth of a close-knit domestic sphere, young Theodore, affectionately termed Teedy, found his childhood beset by a looming malaise, recurrent asthma that adhered to him with unyielding obstinacy. Fueled by youthful determination, he resolved to fortify his physique. In this aspiration, he discovered a lifelong commitment to building the body's vitality, adopting gymnastic routines and weightlifting regimens, exuberantly subscribing to the philosophy of leading a strenuous life. Set against a backdrop of private tutors and globe-trotting adventures, including a trip to the then German Empire, Theodore's quenchless intellectual appetite only intensified. This scholarly yearning propelled him to Harvard University's hallowed halls in 1876, where his academic explorations encompassed German linguistics, natural history, biology, forensic studies, and rhetorical composition. Yet his ebullience transcended scholarly limits as he enthusiastically delved into boxing and wrestling, thereby wholeheartedly welcoming the thrill of physical enterprise. Then, in an extraordinary twist of fate, love graced Theodore's already monumental life path. It was through a fortuitous introduction by a mutual acquaintance at Harvard that he encountered Alice Hathaway Lee, the heiress of a prosperous New England banking dynasty. Their affections for each other matured with swift intensity, culminating in vows exchanged amidst the russet hues of October in the year 1880. Although Theodore initially embarked on legal studies at Columbia Law School, the clarion call of public service resounded too powerfully to ignore, leading him to forsake his legal ambitions within just a year. At that moment, we have to wonder if even Teddy himself was ready for what would happen next, as his indomitable zest for life and political verve would not only lead him to the top of power in the United States, but usher in a family dominance over America's trajectory that had never been seen before or since. Now, in the year 1884, Theodore Roosevelt faced a gut-wrenching calamity that shattered his world in a mere 48 hours. As Alice delivered their firstborn daughter, Alice Lee, Theodore was forced to confront the unspeakable sorrow of losing both his mother to typhoid and his cherished Alice to renal complications, all within the confines of their home. Heart-rending grief led him to immerse himself in his political obligations for the ensuing 4 months. However, perhaps to process the heartache, the irrefutable allure of untamed landscapes called him away from the East Coast. Theodore journeyed into the rough-hewn Dakota Badlands, finding a semblance of solace as a cattle rancher and frontier wayfarer. Amidst the sprawling plains, he found a retreat in grizzly bear hunting and the pastoral care of his livestock. The unforgiving winter of 1887 to 1888 decimated most of his cattle, steering his resolve to return to the East Coast, where he nurtured a love rekindled for his childhood infatuation, Edith Kermit Carow. In a move worthy of romantic novels, the couple pledged their eternal devotion in a remote English ceremony in 1886. United, they constructed their domestic sanctuary in the captivating environs of Sagamore Hill in one of the aforementioned hometowns, Oyster Bay, New York. Their family expanded in subsequent years, with another Theodore, Kermit, Ethel, Archibald, and Quentin joining Alice. And upon his return to New York, Teddy fervently resumed his written endeavors, which initially had gained recognition with his esteemed volume, The Naval War of 1812, published in 1882. During this prolific stretch, he authored several notable works, including The Life of Thomas Hart Benton in 1887, The Life of Gouverneur Morris in 1888, and his magnum opus, The Winning of the West, a 4-volume epic with a release schedule that spanned more than a half-decade. Furthermore, political aspirations rekindled within Theodore Roosevelt as he sought the position of New York City's mayor in 1886, albeit without attaining victory. However, his ensuing endorsement of Republican presidential candidate Benjamin Harrison in 1888 propelled him to the national stage. Harrison's triumph facilitated Theodore's appointment to the Civil Service Commission, a responsibility he honored with steadfast dedication, unwavering in his commitment, even when faced with considerable political persuasions to bend ethical norms. Adhering to his principled views on civil service laws, Roosevelt didn't waver even after securing a second appointment from Democratic President Grover Cleveland in 1893, despite the disapproval of party luminaries. Transitioning to the role of president of the New York City Police Board in 1895, he pursued reforms with an indomitable will. His endeavors included banning Sunday alcohol sales and purging corruption from the police board itself. The year 1897 marked another career milestone when President-elect William McKinley appointed Teddy Assistant Secretary of the Navy, aligning with Roosevelt's fervent belief in naval power as a cornerstone of national defense, and the explosion of the U.S. battleship Maine in Havana Harbor in 1898 propelled him into immediate action. As acting Secretary of the Navy, he swiftly mobilized the Navy and directed Commodore George Dewey to brace for combat with Spain, a critical prelude to the imminent invasion of the Philippines. As the Spanish-American War broke out, Roosevelt forsook his administrative position to lead the 1st U.S. Volunteer Cavalry, popularly known as the Rough Riders. This eclectic unit, consisting of Ivy League graduates, cowboys, sheriffs, police officers, and Native Americans, stormed San Juan Hill under Roosevelt's leadership, showcasing unmatched bravery even amidst devastating casualties. Their triumphant return to the United States earned them near universal praise and solidified Roosevelt's military legacy. Upon his being crowned a celebrated war hero, Roosevelt found himself courted by New York's Republican Party to vie for the gubernatorial seat. Running against Democrat Judge Augustus Van Wyck in a hotly contested race, Roosevelt clinched a slim victory, bolstered by the influential backing of Thomas C. Platt, the state's Republican Party stalwart. However, Roosevelt's unwavering commitment to autonomous policy-making and patronage quickly led to a rift with Platt. Specifically, as Roosevelt delved into progressive policy measures, such as taxing public utilities, tensions with Platt escalated. Recognizing Roosevelt's capacity to destabilize the Republican state apparatus, Platt cleverly maneuvered to elevate him to the vice presidency in 1900, thus blocking his path to re-election as governor. Accepting the position, Roosevelt recalibrated his ambitions toward the presidency in 1904, fully cognizant that party leaders had choreographed the convention to pave his way. Subsequently, Theodore Roosevelt Jr. emerged as the uncontested choice for vice president in the Republican nomination, a clear sign of the party's confidence in him. With vigor, he took to the campaign trail to support William McKinley, his party's candidate for president. Standing against McKinley were Democratic challengers William Jennings Bryan and Adlai E. Stevenson. And Roosevelt's campaign was nothing short of a spectacle, reaching over 3 million people firsthand. A specially chartered train carried him across more than 20,000 miles as he delivered impassioned addresses in more than 500 locales, spread across 24 states. As newspaper columnist Mr. Dooley humorously noted, "'Tis Tiddy alone that's running," adding, "He ain't a-running, he's galloping." And this energy paid off. With a lead of over 800,000 votes, the McKinley-Roosevelt ticket triumphed, marking one of the largest victories for the Republicans in years. Of the 70.2 million votes cast, McKinley garnered 292 Electoral College votes, dwarfing Bryan's 155, and the win was even more commanding than McKinley's initial victory in 1896. However, tragedy soon struck in September 1901, when President McKinley was assassinated by a wild gunman, somewhat unexpectedly thrusting Theodore Roosevelt into position as the 26th President of the United States, and the youngest to ever hold the office. While Theodore Roosevelt was grappling with his first full term as president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Teddy's cousin, and Eleanor Roosevelt, Teddy's niece, married in front of a glamorous gathering of society's elite on a brisk spring day in 1905. Indeed, this wedding represented more than just marital bliss. It signified the merger of two American dynasties. Franklin's father, James Roosevelt, was already a paragon of old money affluence, not just a successful entrepreneur, but also a generous philanthropist within New York society. Yet Franklin's mother, Sarah Delano Roosevelt, was no less remarkable. She hailed from the Delano family, a lineage known for their maritime and trading empires, which had garnered both significant wealth and social influence over the years. Eleanor Roosevelt's parentage also boasted remarkable elite credentials, adding another layer of complexity to the Roosevelt couple's shared heritage. Her father, Elliott Roosevelt, was a sibling to Theodore Roosevelt. However, his life was tragically marred by struggles with addiction, a plight that colored Eleanor's early years but also fortified her resilience and sense of empathy. And her mother, Anna Hall Roosevelt, descended from the distinguished Livingston and Ludlow families, both storied names that stretched back to the founding days of the American colonies. Indeed, the Livingstons were influential politicians and landowners whose members included signatories of the Declaration of Independence, while the Ludlows were known for their legal contributions, including their role in framing early American jurisprudence. Therefore, both Franklin and Eleanor were products of families deeply rooted in American history and tradition, yet also profoundly influenced by the progressive ideologies that had evolved within the Roosevelt lineage. You see, the couple's cousin/uncle, Theodore Roosevelt, had played a pivotal role during the progressive era. Franklin would later inherit this dedication to social transformation, while Eleanor would become a legendary champion for gender equality and social fairness. Thus, their matrimony evolved into an ideal collaboration, each complementing the other's traits and talents. Franklin, with his captivating charisma and outgoing nature, provided the vision. Eleanor, intelligent and more reserved, offered practical insight, and together they were an unstoppable force. Years later, when Franklin assumed the presidency in 1933, the United States was plunged into the depths of the Great Depression. Unemployment was rampant, and the economy was on the verge of collapse. Wasting no time, Franklin began to roll out a sequence of initiatives collectively known as the New Deal, aimed at offering relief to the jobless, energizing the economy, and restructuring the financial landscape. The New Deal was a monumental undertaking. Additionally, in the context of New Deal achievements, the Social Security Administration stood out as another seminal program. Serving as a financial safety net, the SSA extended support to the elderly, the differently abled, and those without employment. Though the New Deal faced its share of detractors, those who criticized its cost or argued that it expanded governmental power too much, Franklin D. Roosevelt remained resolute. Furthermore, Franklin D. Roosevelt's leadership during World War II marked another pivotal chapter in his tenure. As Commander-in-Chief, he navigated the United States through one of the darkest periods in human history. The strategic alliance he formed with Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin, known as the Big Three, played a decisive role in the defeat of the Third Reich. Under his guidance, the US military was mobilized on an unprecedented scale, contributing to victories in both the European and Pacific theaters. His direction of initiatives such as the Manhattan Project also pushed the boundaries of what was scientifically possible, although these actions would generate complex ethical debates for years to come. Following Franklin D. Roosevelt's death in 1945, Eleanor persisted as an influential public persona. Arguably, her magnum opus was her role in crafting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a seminal document outlining the essential liberties inherent to all human beings. Not only has the Declaration been translated into more than 500 languages, but it also stands as the world's most universally translated document. Her imprint was also felt in the struggle for racial equality in America, as Eleanor was vocal in opposing racial segregation and various forms of discrimination. In fact, she walked side by side with iconic civil rights figures like Martin Luther King Jr., pushing the US towards a more egalitarian future. Eleanor Roosevelt passed away in November 1962 at the age of 78, leaving millions around the globe in a state of sorrow. Her influence on American civic life and the advancement of civil liberties was immeasurable. However, with her passing, the name Roosevelt would not disappear as a fixture of American life. Indeed, we could argue that the next generation of Roosevelts would only further bolster and expand a legacy that was older than the country itself. Born in August 1914, just a few months before the end of hostilities in World War I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt Jr. inherited a name with perhaps no more prestige and pressure than any other moniker in American history. At the time of his birth, his father FDR was Assistant Secretary of the Navy, and after a notable military career, Franklin Jr. held a congressional seat representing New York from 1949 to 1955. There, he poured unflagging energy into representing his constituents and championing issues dear to him, leading to President John F. Kennedy taking note of his prowess and designated him Under Secretary of Commerce in 1963. In this capacity, he contributed to the economic prosperity of the nation, extending the Roosevelt lineage of high-level government involvement and financial power. Further solidifying his family's long commitment to progressive ideals, Roosevelt Jr. served as the inaugural chairman of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission from 1965 to 1966, an agency that became a linchpin in the struggle for civil liberties and workplace fairness. And notably, FDR Jr. himself continued the old money tradition of strategic intermarriage like his father and mother, with Jr. marrying legendary DuPont heiress and socialite Ethel DuPont in 1937. These days, the Roosevelt family is still inextricably connected to both public service and membership in the financial elite, as they have been for literally hundreds of years at this point. For example, Theodore Roosevelt IV has carved out a name for himself as an investment banker and ardent environmentalist. Passionate about conservation and sustainable practices, he's founded multiple eco-focused organizations and championed wildlife and land preservation on a global scale. Tweed Roosevelt, also a great-grandson of President Theodore Roosevelt, heads the Theodore Roosevelt Association as its president and CEO. This non-profit entity is dedicated to safeguarding the enduring impact of President Theodore Roosevelt, and Tweed is a fervent advocate for both ecological conservation and public duty, much like his great-grandfather. As far as descendants of FDR, Mark Roosevelt made his mark in the educational realm, serving as the executive director of St. John's College in Annapolis, Maryland, from 2014 to 2018, and Kermit Roosevelt III has gained recognition as a constitutional law professor at the University of Pennsylvania. All in all, the Roosevelt family is, much like many American dynasties, a collage of contradictions. On one hand, they are a bunch of ruthless, old-money business tacticians, snapping up real estate, financial clout, and political power with the hunger of wolves. On the other, they are a living embodiment of noblesse oblige, a family that never let their extreme wealth and influence get in the way of their responsibility to do good for not only their fellow citizens, but the entire world at large.